Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 117 of Teaching Tales, the podcast totally devoted to sharing stories from the world of education, and beyond the world of education, for that matter. I am Brent, your host. I am an elementary educator in beautiful Southern California, and in this episode titled Contagious Joy, no guest. It's just me. I know typically I have a guest on, but every once in a while, I will fly solo and share a story on my own, and that's what I'm going to do today. So let's jump right in. So a little background for those of you who know me, or if you've listened to the podcast before, I happen to have a particular restaurant that happens to be my favorite, happens to be a little weird for many. That restaurant is El Pollo Loco. I eat there multiple times a week. I love this restaurant. I have talked about why in previous episodes. I've got an episode called What's Your Green Sauce? I've got an episode called Find Your Pollo. If you're intrigued and you haven't listened to those episodes yet, look those up after this one, of course. But I love El Pollo Loco. I eat there multiple times a week, and I had something happen in my local El Pollo Loco this past week that I just have to share with everybody. So over the past couple of years, I've been going to the same location in my city for years and years and years. But over the past couple of years, there is one particular young man, an employee who works at this restaurant, who is just amazing. He exudes joy. I've spoken with him. I have got his permission to share this story. I'm not going to use his name just out of respect for him, but this young man is the personification of joy. This young man has a light that just shines out of him. Over the last few years, every single time I've come into the restaurant, if he's been working, got a smile on his face. He greets me. He greets other customers. He interacts with joy with everybody that he comes into contact with. He has contagious joy. If I walk into the restaurant and I see him, I instantly become more joyful because of the light, the joy that is exuding from this young man. And for the longest time, I've wanted to say something to him. I've wanted to just affirm him and say, hey man, I appreciate you. So this past week, I resolved, and I said, you know what? The next time I'm in the restaurant, if he's working, I'm going to say something to him. So lo and behold, last time I went in, he was working. No other customers were in the restaurant. I thought it's the perfect time. So I went up to the counter and kind of waved him up to the front. He came up and he'd already greeted me with a smile, and I'd already felt better being in his presence. And I said, hey man, I just want to tell you that I appreciate the joy that you bring to work each and every day. I said, man, there is a light that just shines in you. And I just want to tell you, I appreciate it. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, the look on this young man's face was worth $1 million. He was shocked. He extended his hand to me, shook my hand. He looked at me and he said, thank you so much, sir. He said, you have made my day. And I said, well, I've been wanting to tell you this for a long time. Now, I share this story on the podcast for two reasons. The first is this. I want to remind all of us that we have an opportunity to do for those who we encounter at work. We have the opportunity to do the same thing for those people as this young man has done for me. We have the opportunity to bring joy to the workplace. Now, are we going to have bad days? Yes. Does this young man have bad? Yes, of course he does. We're not going to love our job every minute of every day. There's got to be challenges. But this young man is intentional. He brings the joy. He lets his light shine. And I want to encourage you, if you're listening to this, we have the opportunity to do the same thing. What if every one of us brought this kind of joy to our workplace? Imagine how we could transform our work environment, regardless of position. I mean, This could be the superintendent, a director, principal, teacher, instructional aide, playground supervisor, campus security, counselor, secretary, bus driver, crossing guard, the guy who fixes the buses when they break down, the bus driver. Doesn't matter. We have the opportunity to bring the joy and make those around us. It's contagious, that contagious joy. So that's the first reason. I want to share this is tomorrow when you go to work, if it's the weekend when you're listening, next time you go to work, be intentional about that joy because you may have that contagious joy effect on those around you. And the second reason I wanted to share this story is this. When I shared this with him, he told me, "You have made my day." So here's what I want to encourage you. If when I told this story, you may be thinking, or I'll ask you the question, is there somebody in your life, somebody at work, somebody at the gym, somebody at the grocery store, somebody at your local Starbucks, somebody where whenever you interact with them, you're like, wow, there's something different about this person. He or she just exudes joy. If that's the case, here's my, I don't want to call it a challenge. I encourage you, tell this person, tell him, tell her, because like I was able to do for this young man, he said, "You made my day." If you've got somebody who's making your day, tell him. Tell him, because he or she needs to hear it. All right? And one final thing that I want to add before I close. Now, again, you do not, what I had just shared is applicable to everyone. But I want to add one little addition that for those of you who know me, and if you listen to the podcast, you may know I am a person of faith. I am a man of faith, a very imperfect man of faith. I am a follower of Christ who is saved by grace. I am so far from perfect, it's ridiculous. I'm imperfect, but I am a follower. I am a believer. And when I have encountered this young man in a Pollo Loco, I've been thinking to myself, you know that light that's shining in him? I think he's a believer too. And at the end of my conversation with him this past week, I asked him, I said, "Hey, one more question. Are you a believer?" And he looked me in the eyes and he said, "Yes." He said, "That light, it's him and me." I said, "You can tell." Ladies and gentlemen, if you are a person of faith, the greatest compliment I think that we can be given is for someone to say, even without mentioning the name of Jesus or anything like that, or hey, come to church, they can just tell there's a light shining in you. The greatest compliment we can get is someone to say, "I can tell your light shines." So I would encourage you, if you're a person of faith, continue to let your light shine. And if there's somebody around you who is shining his or her light, encourage that person. Because once again, I think the greatest compliment as a believer that you can get is for someone to say, "Hey, are you a believer?" And they say, "Yeah." How did you know? "I can just tell. I can just tell." So I would encourage you, let your light shine. And if you see someone around you who is shining their light, let them know. So once again, you do not have to be a religious person to get something out of this. This is applicable to everybody. We have the opportunity to share joy, to exude joy. And when you see somebody who is that contagious joy, tell them, tell her, because it can make their day. All right. Hopefully this wasn't too much of a ramble. Hopefully you were encouraged by this. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already done so, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast provider, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can listen directly on my website on the podcast page at brentcoley.com. Thank you. I appreciate you for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day and week. And until next time, have a good one.